one of the most important questions you can ask your partner, whether it's, something on the kinky side or the not so kinky side, is how do you want to feel in sex? Like, how do you want to feel in our connection? Because somebody may want to, they may want to have a spanking, for instance, but what they may want to feel in that, like, there's a whole range of things that they can feel. Everything from, absolution to I care enough about you to make this correction to, you've been a bad boy or girl and, this is something that's going to help you to course correct. All of those things, all of those feelings are possible with one act.
Welcome to The Intimate Philosopher, where philosophy meets intimacy and life's biggest questions finally feel at home. I'm Dr. Emma Smith. I'm a licensed professional counselor, certified sex therapist, and existential philosophy nerd, inviting you to join me for an after-hours conversation. This is a space to slow down, pour a glass of wine, or maybe a cup of tea, and explore the messy, beautiful intersections of meaning, connection, desire, and being fully human. This is the place for real conversations about the parts of life that don't fit neatly into a box. So, grab your glass, get comfy, and let's dive in. Hi, friends, and welcome back to The Intimate Philosopher. I am so excited to share my guest with you today. My guest is Deborah Kat. And Deborah, I'm so happy to have you here. I'm going to read your bio in a second, but if you want to say hello, that's great.
Well, I am thrilled to be here and thank you so much for inviting me and congratulations on getting up and starting. And I'm so excited for this conversation.
Oh, me too. Okay, so I'm going to brag on you a little bit here. So, Deborah Kat brings over 20 years of experience as a Pro Domme and certified Tantric educator with training in Tantra, kink, massage, and relational practices. And she's worked with everyone from CEOs to newlyweds and supporting people in creating better sex and more satisfying relationships. She's the host of the Better Sex podcast and the creator of the Better Sex Skool community. And I love this part. She believes that better sex makes better humans and a better world. I love that.
Thank you so much. It's always so fun to hear, like, oh, that's me.
Yes. Yeah, that is you. That's amazing. How did you get into this work?
Thanks for asking. So, I think I was lucky enough to be born in San Francisco. And so right off the bat, I, was inspired by alternative folks. And then when I was in my teens, I worked at the Renaissance Fair. And so my early lovers all came from the Renaissance Fair. And if you know anything about the Renaissance Fair, it's all about costumes and characters and props. And so we were playing with all these things, during the day and then bringing them into our intimate life in the evening. And so I was really lucky. I had some amazing, models on what's possible in relationship. And I became one of those people that you ask. I was that person. It's funny. I saw something on Instagram lately about, like, having the hoe friend or the slut friend that you can ask. And I will proudly step into that position because I was that person. Um, so, that was kind of the what the place that I had. I was really just sort of in the right place at the right time, and I knew somebody who was a professional dom, and they needed some help in creating a scene for one of their clients, and they said, "Hey, there's this thing." And so I was like, "I'm in." And, and then, I just got really fascinated because not only was there the theater and the costumes and all of that, but underneath the, there was a lot of healing And so I got to see people really have the experience of healing something that didn't really have another way to come out. And so that's kind of how I started into the Pro Dom world. And then um, from there, I took a lot of Tantra classes, and I noticed that there were a lot of similarities between, sort of the Dom sub role and the masculine feminine role, and just really started playing with that. And what I love about both of these practices is they are a way, in my infinite opinion, to find spirit in the body and to really bring that possibility of something bigger into our lives.
Yeah. Wow, that's so beautiful. And I love how wholesome you make dom work sound, right? Because I think that one of the things that's so interesting about this work, I teach human sexuality and we always survey our students at the beginning of the quarter and we say like which chapters are you the most nervous about? And without fail, the BDSM chapter is the one that people have, like, big feelings about, and also it is the one that at the end, people feel the most transformation around, like, they're just like, "Oh, this isn't anything like what I thought it was," so I think that's so fascinating.
Yeah, well, so there's so much to be learned from the kink world and BDSM. In fact, I like to, I think that the whole consent conversation really started in the BDSM world because to be able to really allow yourself to surrender or allow yourself to step in. Like you need to have a solid container. You need to know who's doing what to whom, what the boundaries are, what we're looking for. I think one of the most important questions you can ask about, ask your partner, whether it's, something on the kinky side or the not so kinky side is how do you want to feel in sex? Like, how do you want to feel in our connection? Right? Because somebody may want to, they may want to have a spanking, for instance, right? But what they may want to feel in that, like there's a whole range of things that they can feel. Everything from, you know, uh, absolution to I care enough about you to make this correction to you've been a bad boy or girl and this is something that's going to help you to course correct. Like all of those things, all of those feelings are possible with one act, right? And when I talk to my couples a lot about sex, particularly, and what is it they're coming to sex for? Right? Are they coming for stress release? Are they coming for connection? Are they coming to feel adored? Are they coming to feel of service? Like all of these things can happen in the same act, if you will. And sometimes you have two people in the same act who are looking for very different things. And if they're complimentary, awesome. If they're not complimentary, sometimes you need to have a conversation.
Absolutely. Well, and I think it can change from encounter to encounter too, right? And so having the ability and the skill set to have that conversation and the safety in your relationship to have that conversation, I think is so important. That's amazing. Okay. So I'm going to ask a question that feels very obvious, but I feel like a lot of people want to ask this question, but they're not sure how to. And that
Mhm.
is, what is actually Tantra?
Yeah. So Tantra's a big word. It's like yoga, right? So there's many lineages, there's many relationships, there's many rituals, there's many different teachers and ways to think about it. So for me personally, Tantra is a way of finding spirit through the body. And what I mean by that is so many of our spiritual practices are either, trying to tame the body um, you know, you can't find spirit within the body. It has to be up and out, somewhere else. Whereas, Tantra is like, yes, the body is part of the human experience. The human experience is part of the bigger picture. The bigger picture is part of spirit, and everything is connected. And so that's a big part of what it is. I think, in the Western world, for the most part, we have had the very small um, compartment of tantra being sacred sex. And yes, it could make sex even better. you know, One of my teachers used to say when you bring spirit into bed, it's a whole new experience. And you think about like one of the things that is often said during sex is like, "Oh my god," or, you know,
Yeah.
any number of deities names there. But it's really a practice. When it comes down to it, it's a practice. And I like to talk about the practice of connection, right?
Mhm.
Because we're really taking this practice and connecting with self and connecting with, our physical bodies, connecting with our hearts, connecting with our partners, connecting with whatever it is that we interpret as bigger than us. And so, if there was one word to sum it up, it's connection. Um, in the biggest form of what is possible in connection.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. Man, I could listen to you talk all day. Okay, this is going to be a very long episode, folks, now. Oh my gosh, that sounds so incredible. And when I have listened to your work on your own podcast and of course my favorite episode is the one that I got to talk to you on. But
That was so much fun.
it was so much fun. One of the phrases that you use that I love so much, and I think it feeds very nicely into this conversation, is you talk about relationship as practice. And can you say more?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, you know, I've been with my partner for 27 years,
Mm,
and he is a new person and a different person, and I am too. And the more that we can, the more that we can come together as practice. And what I mean by that is, I'm always learning something new. And he's always learning something new. And so bringing it to each other to practice, whether it is overt, and I tend to be more on the overt side of things, like, hey, I just learned this thing. What do let's try it. And or he'll have his own practice. So he comes from a martial arts background. So for him, the practice is, how grounded and present could I be
oh, okay.
while things are happening, right? And so we have our separate practices, and then we actually have practices that we do together. And for instance, one of the practices we have is we go for a walk almost every day together. And what that does is that allows us to be in each other's presence while we're moving our bodies.
Yes.
And those are the times where we seem to be able to have some of those conversations that we don't have when we're sitting on the couch, right? And so, the idea of relationship as a practice is that, you had a fight, or we had a fight. It didn't go the it didn't go the way the book said it was gonna go, right? Chances are there's gonna be another fight, and we can try it something, differently. And, from time to time, we'll step away from each other, and then we'll come back, and I'll be like, babe, that did not go the way I would prefer. And, I'm curious, what would have been better for you to hear in that moment? When something like that happens, this is what I need. This is what I would like to hear. Sometimes that can happen, but the more practice we have in, outside of those tense spaces, the more that we have the possibility of doing it differently the next time,
Yeah.
you know? And I would say that one of the places where this is incredibly important is in bed. When we learn how to touch each other, when we learn how to communicate, you know, when we learn how to bring our desires to each other. And there's stages in relationship, right?
Mhm.
In the beginning, we've got chemistry, we've got everything is new, everything is fabulous. Um, that didn't land that great, but no problem because he's amazing or she's amazing. And then as the chemistry shifts and we become more we're taking care of life in a different way, then we still, there's things still come up, right? And so how do we handle it without chemistry? Or how do we handle it um without really charging each other up? And so it's just an opportunity to have the thing happen, step away, talk about it, see if we can't do it differently, or and then it does become smoother. We do become better at it. We become better at touching each other in a way that feels good to each other. We learn each other's way of flirting. I mean, I think one of the most underrated things that a couple can do is flirt with each other.
Oh, I agree. I
And
absolutely agree.
there's a way in which we flirt with each other that is just, different. Like, I mean, for me, so my love language is acts of service. And so one of the ways that my partner flirts with me is by suggesting we make the bed together. It's like, "Ooh,
There you go. I love that. Yeah.
yeah." I mean, it's kind of a like, "Hey, the," but that's not necessarily what you would think of flirting back in the chemistry stage.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not gonna read that in a book, right? That says, "Make the bed together," because an editor would be like, "Well, that's not gonna what? What are you talking about?" But you're right. It is these little things that are, so specific and so nuanced to each individual person and at a particular stage of life, right? Like, I remember when I was in the thick of writing my dissertation and I walked out one time and I had realized that while I had been writing for, 5 hours or whatever obnoxious amount of time it was, my partner had like cleaned the counter and, had done all of this stuff that I mean, it looked like a showroom when I walked out. And I was like, that is so hot, right? Because it really was, but I mean, and people think I'm joking, but I'm like, it actually had an erotic quality to it because what it did is it allowed my nervous system to relax from all of this tension. And I was like, oh, it's actually nice to be in my body in this space. And it did have an erotic quality to it. It's crazy, but this is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like we feel gotten.
Yeah.
And when we feel gotten, there's something that, magic happens.
Absolutely, absolutely. Speaking of magic that probably we weren't ever taught, what are some of the skills that you think make the biggest difference that you have seen, like, when couples start implementing these things, it makes such a big difference, but we probably weren't taught.
Yeah, gosh, there's so much. When I sort of have things divided up into three pillars, right? We have the empowerment pillar, and that's really knowing what we want and feeling the permission to ask for it, right? And then there's the communication piece, which is the skill of, how do I ask for something a little different? And then there are the pleasure skills themselves, which is, how do I touch this person? How am I touched? How do I know what to say or what to do? And I think, we're not really taught any of these things. What we're sort of done, it's sort of like, here's what's been done through history, best of luck. And from time to time we get, the videos on how to give a good blowjob, or how to give, a good massage, which is amazing.
Mhm.
And before that, there's still the conversation that needs to happen of like, hey, how do you like to be touched? One of the things I love about, so Betty Martin has a game called the 10-minute game. I think it's 10 minutes or maybe it's 3. Anyway, the idea is you ask your partner, what would you like me to do to you for 5 minutes? And then after that, so then they say, "Oh, I would like you to, brush my hair, and I would like you to, rub my feet." And so you do the thing. And then they ask, "What would you like to do to me?" Right? And so and then you kind of have this back and forth, and part of the question is who is doing what to whom?
Mhm.
And then the second question is for whose pleasure?
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And so there's this place of like, I can touch you for my pleasure. I can also be touched for my pleasure, right?
Mhm.
Just like I can let you touch me for your pleasure, and touch you for your pleasure. So bringing these kinds of conversations in and the nuance of that, most of the time, when we have sex, there's this idea that it's going to be pleasurable for both of us without any questions.
Yes, I somehow that myth got birthed into the ether and we haven't quite figured out how to tamp it down again.
Right. And we're very shy, most of us, about letting our partners know how something actually feels.
Mhm.
Like, I can't tell you how often in a couple's conversation, we'll sort of start talking about what actually feels good to a body. And the partner then finds out, like, oh my goodness, I've been doing this thing for 10 years and you never let me know that it didn't feel good.
Yeah.
Or that if I went a little higher or a little lower, it would feel even better.
Mhm.
And so, being able to have these conversations is really, really important. Going back to your original question, though, I think one of the most important things that we are never taught is that sex and relationship are going to be awkward, and sometimes they're going to be disappointing, and sometimes we're going to disappoint someone else. And that it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with the relationship or us or our partners. It's part of the bigger picture.
Oh my gosh. Can you say that again just in case people missed it the first time because that is so perfect.
Absolutely. So, disappointment is going to happen, right? We are going to be disappointed. Our partners are going to be disappointed. And it doesn't mean that anything about us or our partners or the relationship, right? It just means that disappointment happens, just like awkwardness happens. And, sometimes, a lot of the time, I like to say, we're kind of in this place of can we embrace the awkwardness, right? Can we be, one of the worst things that happens for us as we are learning about sex is that we see perfect sex, right? We see, you know, um, people having perfect sex, and it just doesn't happen that way, right? One of the worst things is like we see movies, right? Whether it's porn, whether it's rom-com, whether it is, whatever. And it's not awkward. Like it's passionate, it's interesting. Well, sometimes it's interesting, sometimes it's not so interesting, depending. Anyway, there's not really a whole lot of awkwardness. There's not
Mhm.
that moment where you need more lube or where the erection disappears or where the pillows go everywhere or the cat jumps in, right? All of those awkward places um that happen,
Yeah.
these things happen in real sex and real relationships. asking your partner, if they want to have sex, letting your partner know that, not right now. Like all of these things can be awkward conversations. And we get so afraid of being awkward or saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing. Now, admittedly, it's like early in the relationship, it can feel like, doing the wrong thing, or saying the wrong thing is a swipe to the left, right? Anyway, whichever way you swipe the wrong, where you're discarding somebody, I mean, it can feel like that. But ultimately, the hope is that we have partners where we can make mistakes, where we can come back, where we can learn from it, where we can practice being better humans, and being better lovers and being better partners. Because it's not something that it's something that happens over time.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That is so true because I know I have some clients who are, they're divorced and then like they're back on the dating scene and it can feel like this real high stakes, in experience with somebody and sometimes people aren't nice, right? And you have to say like, I'm sorry that happened to you. Also, better you find out now because guess what? In the course of a long-term relationship, you're gonna have some days that are off or things don't go right, and you want somebody who it's okay to be fully human around.
Absolutely. And, we have these, I don't know if they're standards or they're fantasies of what a relationship should look like. But, there's a lot of pressure that we put on ourselves and our partners to fit some mold that isn't accurate.
That's
Um,
so true.
one of the things I see really early in the beginning where it's like, somebody will go on a first date and then they'll be like, yeah, well, I didn't feel chemistry or attraction or any of those things. And I understand that that's what you're looking for. And I also invite people to consider that it's like, for at least the first couple of dates, you guys are so nervous
Yes.
that it's
Yes.
it's worth it to try again a couple of times before deciding uh, you know, what's true about that relationship. And I
Yeah.
think that's another thing, that's something that I like people to really understand is that it's like relationships sort of have a life of their own. It's like there's two people who come together and then there's this third thing that happens, the relationship. And oftentimes we'll come to it and we'll be like, "Oh, this is what it's going to look like. This is how it's going to escalate." There's a certain expectation of what it might look like or where it might end.
Mhm.
And you might actually connect with each other and realize, wow, we have a great time together. And we build together and do all these things together, but we don't actually have a romantic charge. Or the opposite is true. It's like we have an amazing charge, but we couldn't make a sandwich together. Like, it's there's just not that ability to work together.
Yeah.
And, in relationships, I think you need and you want both.
Sure. Wow, you just described every relationship I had in my 20s where it was like bedroom, fantastic. Life, not so much, and like trying to figure out that piece of how do we be human around each other and like, and I think, yeah, I was raised in the Northeast on the East Coast. And, I think that there's a high performance expectation on both sides of the relationship. And there's a lot of alpha male energy, which doesn't mean what people think it means. Um, and and then there's also that same, confidence. I mean, New Jersey women are a stereotype for a reason, right? Like, so
Are you a Jersey girl?
I am a Jersey girl transplanted to the Bible Belt where people make references all day long that I don't get.
Well, I that's awesome. I have a small collection of amazing Jersey girls in my life, so I'm
Oh.
glad to hear that you're a Jersey girl. That makes me very
I
happy.
am. I am. I have to go to my favorite question that I've been dying to ask you because it's one that I just thought was unbelievably awesome. And you talk about one of the biggest misconceptions that you find in your work that other people have. And I can't wait for you to lay this out for us.
Absolutely. So I'm imagining you're talking about this idea that our partners are responsible for our turn on and our attraction.
Yep, that's the
And
one.
and I was kind of hinting about this, a little bit before because, we have this idea that, we're going to meet somebody and they're going to make us feel something. And while it's true, we can absolutely feel more of something in someone else's presence, right? Turn on and attraction starts with self, right? It starts with cultivating our sexual energy. It starts with cultivating our confidence. It starts with really being able to feel our own bodies, you know? And what I mean by cultivate our sexual energy is so in Tantra, we use movement and breath and sound. Those are our three big pillars, if you will. And, the thing is it's like the more we move our bodies, the more turn on we often feel, right?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So consider for just a moment. Right. One of I often tell my clients, it's like, when somebody feels like they have low libido, right? I suggest that they, create time after they come back from the gym for some sexy time, right?
Okay.
Because when you've been moving your body, when you're in your body, you have a tendency to feel more sensation, right? There's, all of the hormones going off, the dopamine, um, the serotonin, all the stuff. And
Yeah.
so, you're feel it you feel a certain way. And then when you're in somebody else's presence, we often go, "Oh, it's them that makes me feel this way."
Ah, okay. Yeah.
So, and you think about it like when you are particularly in the dating phase, I know that you love the first date panties,
I do love some first aid underwear, yes.
but there is this way in which like, we take care of ourselves when we're about to go on a date for the most part.
Yeah.
Right? We spend a little bit of extra time doing our hair, doing our makeup, gentlemen, I invite you to take a little extra time uh, to make sure that what you're wearing is more than a t-shirt, and to dress for yourself as well as your partner. And it's amazing to me. Like one of my very first jobs way back in the day. So I lived near Silicon Valley, and one of my first paying jobs was to take take a young man who is a tech guy who, had nothing but t-shirts and sweatpants to Nordstrom's to go shopping. So we went to Nordstrom's, picked out some clothes for him, had them tailored for him, and he literally walked differently,
Yeah.
right? Because he felt different. Like, there is truth to the idea that clothes make the man, make the person, right? So we have this place where it's like on our, early in our dating relationship, we're taking the time to look good, to feel good. We've got that anticipation happening. All of these things are cueing our own turn on, right? And so when we get together, we've hopefully my glass is full, your glass is full, and so then we're overflowing. If I'm coming to the date and, my glass isn't full, it's empty, I'm exhausted, then I'm putting a lot of pressure on my partner to be able to bring me up. Now, I just want to be clear. There are going to be those days when I don't have it, right? And I've got practices that are going to help me get there, right?
Mhm.
I know, my when I'm having a particularly bad day, my partner will suggest that I go to the pool,
Oh, okay.
right? Because I go to the pool and I'm in the water and life is better, right?
Yes.
There are times when I suggest that he might want to, go to the dojo because he, goes to a class, throws some people around, gets thrown around, and, he comes back better.
Mhm.
I'll also say that this is one of my little, like, when I'm feeling particularly annoyed and unattracted to my partner, I will go and watch him train because I will see him in his highest and best, and it will, like, remind me of how sexy he is when he's, doing his thing, because that's a place where he has a lot of confidence, he has a lot of, skill, he's done it for a while, so it's a place where he is in his mastery, and I highly suggest that, with couples, they have places where they see each other in their partner's mastery, right?
Yeah.
Because, sometimes we forget.
We do. We do. And I love that idea of, I think also what you're describing is seeing your partner as a separate person from you.
Mm.
Like, in order to do what your partner is doing, he's probably not thinking about being your partner in those moments. He is present and absorbed in what he's doing, and that creates the magic. I think that's just so beautiful. So, yeah, absolutely. Ooh, I love that. What's something simple that people can do like today, right now, whenever they're listening to this podcast, that in the next 24 hours they could do that would cause a shift or help them feel a shift in, I don't know, either their relationship or them?
Yeah, well, I think I would start with them and say, where are the places where are the places and what are the practices that help you to feel turned on, sexy, you know, how do you like to move your body? What do you like to wear, right? That makes you feel sexy. Like, what do you like to see? Do you have a certain fragrance? Do you have a certain song? How do you cultivate your own turn on, right? And then I would look to your partner and, consider where is it that you see them in their mastery? Where is it that you see them in their highest and best? And I would also just add in to, it's really easy. We kind of forget to appreciate our partners, right? And to be in approval of our partners. And what I mean by that is, you know, Neil won't always do things the way that I do them. And, there are times when I'm like, but he has a reason for doing it his way.
Mhm.
And we're going to end up, the task is going to end up being done. And it doesn't need to be done my way, and it doesn't need to be done with my micromanaging, right?
Yes.
So, really allowing your partner to have their own way of doing something is really important. And just, sitting back and reminding yourself that whatever they're doing makes sense to them.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's so good. That's really, really good because I don't have couples that do this now, but I've ever worked with couples over the years where it really was about the toilet paper roll, and it would be like sometimes they would look at me and they'd be like, well, like, and I'm like, I can't even tell you what direction my own toilet paper is facing. And it's probably different depending on which bathroom it is because in the realm of things that matter, that one doesn't to me. And maybe that
Mhm.
does to you. And so you could ask for that and like, can I sign up for some of those problems? Like if that's where the energy is going. But also if it's going to help you feel better, like you can turn it around and just, but the reason I think about this for the reason behind it is because one of the times the person said to they actually asked their spouse, "Hey, why do you always put the toilet?" I guess she was like an over person and he kept putting it under. And he said, "Well, when our 2-year-old goes and plays with the toilet paper and tries to bat it and let it roll around, if it's positioned so it goes under, it never unravels. But if it's positioned going over, then we end up with a pile of toilet paper on the floor." And she was like, "Oh my gosh, I thought that you were just not paying attention." And he was. He was paying a lot of attention.
Love that. Well, I love that because it's so true. You know, there a lot of times we just don't actually slow down enough to ask, what made you do that? Or when we ask, it's, with so much energy behind it of why, and, there's something wrong with it that like we don't actually get the, why and how it makes sense to that person.
Yeah. No, that's so real. That's so real. Oh my goodness. This is so good. Everybody better be bookmarking this because they're gonna have to listen to it a couple times to get, I think, all the goodness out of it. So let me transition and say, okay, so what do you have going on right now? And like where can my folks find you and revel in all of this goodness more often?
Well, thank you so much for asking. So, I am the host of the Better Sex podcast.
Love it.
And I also have the Better Sex School community, which, if you're not on school, I really invite you to check it out. It's Skool. And it's so many different interesting places but what I love about it is it's a place to actually have the conversation, right? As much as I love podcasts, and it's an opportunity to have a bigger conversation. So I'm very much about the school community right now. And in June, I'm starting up another cohort of relationship mastery 6 weeks to better sex. So all the things that I smushed into, this this incredible conversation, we get to expand them, and there's practices, and there's conversations and suggestions for you to do with your partner. And I
That's
think
awesome.
that's everything.
Yeah. So with that course, can somebody sign up by themselves or do they have to do it with their partner? How does that work?
Absolutely. So I am a believer that when one person starts practicing, that it is going to have waves that move out. And so it's great if your partner's available for it. It's fine if they're not. And if you're single, again, it's great if you have somebody to practice with, and it's fine if you don't. And I actually have couples, or paired singles that will sign up for 6 weeks to do a practice relationship. And for them, we have a conversation about how to set it up and how to create the container so that they can play together for 6 weeks. And either then they continue to play together or they take their skills and go play with others.
That's incredible. Oh my goodness. Is that online or is that hybrid? How does that work?
Yeah, so it's online. We meet online, and then there's opportunities for forums and to connect more. But it's an online conversation and an online course, and then me being me, it's like you practice and then you come back and you tell us what you find.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
there's so many different ways to do things, and there's no one right way to do relationship, right?
yeah.
There's the way that relationship works for you. whether that is conservative or not conservative, whether it's monogamous or not monogamous, like, you know, if it works for you and your partner in a healthy, nourishing way, then do more of it.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. And you said that you had a resource for our listeners. And so, can you tell us about that?
Yes. So the resource is called the Relationship Lab. And it is basically a way to set up having practices. So this comes out of my experience in the BDSM world and the kink world. And so we talk about the container, which is, the amount of time we're going to spend together and who's going to do what to whom and with what and how do you want to feel. And so I really break all of those things down and give you lots of suggestions on how to play together and to really, go into the lab and see what works and what doesn't. Because for most of us, we've been doing the thing that we saw. We've been doing the thing that we learned back as a teenager.
Yes.
I can't remember who said this, but I think this is so brilliant. It's like we have sex like 13-year-olds for most of our lives. We pleasure ourselves like, 10-year-olds for most of our lives. And so being able to sort of pull back the covers and turn on the lights really changes things up and allows us to have a different experience.
Yes. Oh, that's so good. And I love that resource that people who have either worked with me or have listened to the podcast have probably heard me say that, we don't get training in this. Right? And so there is no expectation that you should know any of this because we've all grown up here. We all didn't get what we needed. And so when you have these resources, I think that's so incredible. And the other thing is, it doesn't matter if you are the kinkiest person on earth or the most vanilla. This conversation is probably one that you need to be having with your partners in order to
Absolutely.
be in the
Absolutely.
moment. Yeah, I love this. I mean, I always say that my work with kinky folks and poly folks and anybody else who doesn't fit in that, like, very narrow kind of mainstream culture has always made me a better therapist
Mhm.
for my, cisgender, heterosexual, vanilla, monogamous folks. Like, because there's all these different conversations that if you didn't ever have to go figure this out, you didn't.
Right, right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and there's so many different ways to like be a dom or a top or a bottom or a sub. And, being able to use that language, whether you're being kinky or whether you're not, is so helpful. I mean, being able to have a conversation about like, "Oh, you know what? This part of my body feels better than this part." Right? A and strangely enough, that's not usually a conversation we have.
No, no. I mean, you have to it's so interesting because, like, you have to know what you like in order to be able to communicate to another person what you want,
Mhm.
right? And so there's some pre-work that goes into this, and, I love this. Well, you may have just spurred on an invitation to do a second episode because I have a feeling people are gonna love that. Oh my gosh, Deborah Kat, you are such a gift of a human. I am so glad that our paths crossed. And thank you so much for coming on and having this conversation with me today.
My goodness, my pleasure, my pleasure, and I'm so excited. This is such a fabulous resource, and I have really been enjoying getting to know you better and having the conversation. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh my goodness. Was that not just such a good conversation? I love, love, love the work that Deborah Kat is doing in the world between just these conversations on relationships and the relationship with yourself, right? Like, that's so cool. And also, this idea of, Tantra being kind of like yoga. And so just because one practice doesn't land for you doesn't mean that there aren't other things to explore in there. I love that. So, anyway, please go check out all of the goodness that she has offered. All of the links are, as always, in the show notes. And I'm so grateful for all of you, for your listening, for your questions. And if this episode landed with you, share it with your partner, right? Or share it with a friend, somebody who needs to know some of this information about the conversations that we're just not having yet. And then we have these expectations and feel disappointed or shamey about ourselves when it's not our fault, right? You just weren't taught these things. So please pass along this episode to somebody who needs to hear it or who you want to hear it. And then you can say, it would mean a lot to me if you would listen to this and see what happens. Okay, friends, I will see you next time. Thank you so much for joining me for this after hours conversation. If something in today's episode made you pause, get curious, or see yourself a little more clearly, share it with a friend and keep that conversation going. Until next time, keep exploring that messy, beautiful space between meaning and being human. I'll see you next time.